should be wrapping up this year. Spending has basically been frozen, so it's just been field trips and, oh, I guess I'll say it out loud, when we have retirement parties and those types of things, you know, that kind of stuff, so, yeah. Anything? All right.
I move to accept the vouchers and receipts as presented.
Second.
Motion by Huber, second by Stroman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, Jessica.
Monthly budget report.
Yes.
In your packet, there are two sheets. So there's, the first one is the 24-25 monthly recap for May. I was out last week, so I apologize. The information that I gave you was before everything was finalized. So in the report that I gave you does not show much revenue that has hit, but we did receive the revenue, and that was in the packet, the financial report that you guys got. So those amounts are in there. It's just in this monthly budget recap, you don't see that. But we did get $347,000 in Fund 10. We had $3,600 in Fund 27, $59,000 in Fund 50, and $50,500 in Fund 80. That's not reflected on your sheet. So again, I apologize that those weren't updated in there, but the information was not complete before I left for vacation. But so far, we are currently in the process of running summer payrolls, which will kind of get a big chunk. So this next month, when we go through the expenses, you're going to see those big expenses for the salaries and benefits for all of the funds, because we're closing out the teachers and all of that for the school year. That's kind of really the big remaining expense that's not included in these breakdowns. But otherwise, like Troy said, for the most part, spending is kind of dwindling down. We do have a few contracts that we're kind of finishing. The CSA contract was on this last expense report, so that's kind of where why it seemed a little bit high, like Jason had asked. So we're just kind of finishing up those contracts that we have that are out there. That's pretty much what's remaining for the rest of the school year.
So for clarification, just because budget's one of those hot topics right now, administrator pay ends on June 30th, administrator and director pay. Teacher pay and benefits doesn't end till August. So we have to submit a bunch of payrolls this month to project the future, so it gets billed in June, but they're technically not getting their payrolls until the bi-weekly payrolls. Does that make sense? Did I explain it?
Okay.
Okay.
So the July and August.
So we kind of live in two budgets. At least I hope to when we get to C and D. Alright. How do you feel where we're at?
Okay, good.
So final numbers should look similar to budget, or?
I mean, it's hard to say because
Yeah, I understand.
missing the salary and benefits, but yeah, I mean, I feel like we're on track with where we
Okay.
had projected for budget purposes.
All right, thank you.
There's just a lot of revenue too that we're waiting to come on, just with the titles and having to submit for those grants. So that's a lot of the stuff that's still outstanding too, and we have to obviously wait for state to approve those and send us the money. So.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of paperwork, sending it to DPI, and I've been approving a lot of things, so that's a positive normally. Alright.
So before we move, the last column where it says percent, I'm assuming that means recorded or received.
Received, yep, and percent.
Anything in there that, you know, some of them are higher, obviously, than 100%. Some of them are still down in the 40s. Seems like a big spread. Is that just kind of the nature of kind of like what he was referring to with the, Mr. Good
Yes.
referred to with the payroll for certain things? So is all that still kind of in the normal category?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the Fund 10 stuff, the revenues on the top portions, if those are the higher, that's great because that's more than what we had budgeted for.
Yeah. Yep.
So like, for interest, we had budgeted $100,000, but we got almost $300,000. So that's
Right.
great.
Yep.
Obviously the ones in the expenses down there, the higher the number, the more that we spent over. So like Board of Education budget was at 104%, so we overspent by $4,400. So I mean,
Yeah.
they're not outrageous. Nothing is jumping out at me that's like, oh wow, we really
I just like to ask that of
Yeah.
people that know that stuff, cause that's not my area of the world.
Yeah.
So if you're good with it, that's good.
You know, and another thing, Steven and I met with, our broker for natural gas. And we're just like, okay, do we lock in, don't we lock in? If we lock in, do we lock in 50%, 70%? What are we doing? Like, it's literally a daily watch of the thing, and he said, when he feels we should lock in X amount, he's literally gonna give us a phone call that morning and be like, go. So, we're waiting right now. But it's projected propane's gonna skyrocket, that he said anyways. So, he's waiting for the right day. Alright, there's no other questions. Jessica also is here for the preliminary budget approval for 25-26, and then, with D, approval of spending orders, this is again the norm. We refined a couple things, not as much as we wanted to, because open enrollment of benefits just finished. However, when it comes to transportation contracts and when it comes to insurance contracts, all of those are pretty much right on the percent increases that we estimated. Yeah, we're gonna leave it at that. Or we estimated a tad bit high and they came in lower. That's normally a good thing too. So we can refine those numbers. But to really sharpen our pencils, we have a giant spreadsheet that we have to go in, input everybody's benefits that they elected, take out retirees and people who have left the district, add the people who are gonna be new, and then Jessica has to go back in and do her thing to update those numbers. But yeah, things are on course to what we have. We're obviously gonna keep looking of where there possibly is cuts or savings. For example, tonight on the agenda, we hired an occupational therapist. That's a huge positive because we're losing occupational therapy assistant. So that was good forecasting. Sorry, we're gonna be losing Melissa because she's wonderful. But the positive is we don't have to burn CISA 8 money because we have our own occupational therapist. So those are the types of things where we have to refine that stuff.
So that is not in here yet.
No, all those little switches around are not in there. That's happening daily. Yeah, yeah.
Is Fund 39 still the one with the biggest spread?
The debt defeasance, yeah.
In here, in this proposal, this does not show a debt defeasance in this preliminary for Fund 39. It just shows what our actual payment is that we have to make for next year. Just kind of not knowing which way we were going yet, I wanted to have it in the budget what we actually did instead of over.
So I guess, if you have questions, it's not much different than we were presented, but we would need, 2 approvals, one of the preliminary budget for 25-26. You approve the actual one in October when we figure out our state aid. And then D, we would need an approval to start putting our requisitions in and paying bills for the 25-26 school year. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, last year we did this all in one motion, is that correct?
Maybe.
I think we did it all last year in one motion and we split
I
it
think
back
I
up.
think we did because, yeah.
Because if you're approving the budget, we said you're approving
Approving-
spending.
Yeah, and
But anyways,
we should have explicitly had this motion in instead of implicit, so it's
Okay.
better to do it this way, yes.
Okay.
I
That's
do
the way
recall
it's
now
typed
finally.
this year.
So I would make a motion to approve the preliminary budget as presented. Second.
Got a motion by Ben Huber, second by Mark Stocko. Further discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll make a motion that we approve spending for orders for 25-26.
Thank you. motion from Chris Strawman,
Second.
second from Ben Huber. Figured if we pause long enough. somebody- Any questions, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, superintendent's report, I really didn't type anything official, for two reasons. I plan on the next agenda to discuss the admin team retreat. It was not what we expected in a positive way. We were mentally exhausted, for a good thing. I really think that the board is going to like what we found out about the district, what we crunched for data, what we have for action steps moving forward. So our plan is to present that to you guys at the next meeting and hopefully get your blessing and say, yes, we're not okay with the status quo. We want improvement, we want growth, specifically for academics. And we have some really good ideas that we wanna present to you. Like, these are non-negotiables moving forward for admin, for staff, for all employees. Like, this is the way it's gonna be. This is the way it should be. We should all want to do better for the sake of the students and the community, and, you know, you can just, all stakeholders, so. It was intense, 4 days of intense. We got about, for the sake of mental health, we got about 2 hours of water park in 4 days. Besides that, it was the grind, it really was, so it was good. And beside that, I love it how people ask, specifically me, oh, summer off. No, this is a lot of, like, Jessica and I figuring things out, Dina, Patsy, Connie figuring out everything for the summer, the admin team, directors wrapping up this year, starting up next year. This is really kind of our busy time right now. I know I sent an email out to the admin team saying, let me know if you're rolling over any vacation, and they kind of said, yeah, we'll try to get a vacation day in, but it is what it is. This is the grind time of year for us, so. Besides that, it's a lot of contracts, it's a lot of X, Y, and Z. Any questions or clarifications on any of that? So, as you can see, we got a lot of hires, which is positive. So at the childcare, we have Aubrey McGee, Tanya Camacho, they're both former students here, so that's great that they've take their expertise over to the childcare center for summer help. Nicole and Rebecca for lead teacher 1 and lead teacher 2s. And then Melissa Locke, again, she was here for many years in the rec center, and we also hired her as an occupational therapy assistant halfway through the year. She's going to a neighboring school district, so I'm really happy for her that she's moving into a position that she really wants. And then Heather Schmidt, she's resigning as Spanish advisor, and later on the agenda, she'll be resigning as a teacher here for Spanish. So that's what we got going on in my report. Any questions or clarifications on that? Okay. So I'm gonna recommend the approval of Matthew Partansky as middle school, high school associate principal. He did join us down at SAIL, which was really nice. On a 3-day notice, he was able to get down there. He did have some really valuable input, and it's always interesting, somebody not knowing the district, not even sitting in the office. It was good to say, so what do you think? What are your thoughts? And he was able to, fit right in and be honest, so that was good. So definitely recommend you approve his hire.
Also move.
Second.
Motion by Strawman, second by Motor. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, 2 teacher resignations, effective at the end of this year. So Michelle Lewis, 4K, and Heather Schmidt, Spanish.
Take a motion.
Make the motion.
Okay, motion by Jason Motor,
Second.
second by, I didn't catch.
Hoffman.
Hoffman, all right. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, positive is about all of these, we've had some really quality candidates, so, good interviews. So Levi for occupational therapist, so, the positive of hiring an occupational therapist is we don't have to have an occupational therapist assistant and then have a contracted service as an OT to oversee that. So we have our own occupational therapist. Dylan, 8th grade ELA, Joanne, 6th grade ELA, Lindsay, family and consumer science, and Madison for 5th grade.
I will move that we hire those teachers as presented.
Second.
Motion by Ben Huber, second by Mark Sacco. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
So, with Gary Funk retiring and us hiring Alex, we wanted to make sure that there was a smooth transition, especially during the summer, to make sure everything is good. So Alex jumped on board last week, already 2 weeks ago, and been working with Gary. Gary has agreed to stay on till, I think it's July 25th. I don't know, the exact contract is in one of these folders. So, yeah, I would.
30. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I think it's the 28th.
28.
Okay.
No, that's June 28. July 31.
Anyways,
Oh, well.
whatever it says on that piece of
Whatever it
paper,
says on that piece of paper.
please approve it so that we can have a smooth transition. Here, I got it right here in front of me. June,
9 to July 25th.
okay, no, that's when it's deposited, well, July 25th, okay? So June 9th to July 25th. So,
Second.
All right. Motion by Mark Sacco, second by Chris Drummond. Any further discussion?
Well, you missed watching Mr. Kuhn's IT experience. I think we're gonna issue him getting the TVs running tonight.
for the record, Drew, before you got here, we have the white snowball mic, so if that doesn't work tonight, I'm gonna order 10 wireless mics so we can have lots of interference.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was a mess. I was trying to get you, and then I'm like, I saw you running through the rain.
Yeah.
The cameras froze twice on us. I
It's
don't
a
know.
Monday on a Monday.
And it's Windows 11. You upgraded everything to Windows 11, and all of a sudden you have the gremlins come out. So
There's somebody in the public that said she would help you if you want.
she sent me a long email. I didn't get a chance to have a face-to-face, but
Okay.
yes,
Just
she has some
throwing that
good
out there as a-
suggestions.
as an option, so.
If you want, the static is good, but the volume's low.
Okay, well, there's one positive.
Okay. We'll take it. Anything going the right direction is a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, or call the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, so the reason why flexible substitute teacher is on this agenda is because a positive is we're hiring Joni Stevenson, who has been our, in a roundabout way, flexible sub for the district. She's been there, done all of our long terms, all of that. Having her move to a full-time teaching position is great for the district, but now we're losing one of those subs that we always rely on. So, it's been brought to me by the admin and brought to me by a couple of people, why don't we hire a flexible substitute teacher? I've talked to a couple of people, we talked to CISA 8HR, Dina has done extensive, research into this, and, Dina, probably Dina more than me, reached out and we built a job description for what this could be. Yes.
Do you want to clarify what the difference between a flexible sub is and just hiring
Correct.
like a regular sub or,
Yeah.
or different subbing opportunities?
So the last time we had a flexible substitute teacher was during COVID, and what we did is we hired a teacher under a flex sub contract where they show up to work every single day. They get paid a slightly different or a higher rate than what a daily sub, but the positive is they're in Clintonville every day. They're our sub. So literally they're reporting to the admin team or they're working with the secretaries. They get booked first before anybody else does. There's also another substitute teacher that we had lost, as well, so, you know, having Joni and this other substitute teacher, we're saying we need somebody on board every day. Now, when it comes to who gets priority, that is an arm wrestling match between Madeline, Chuck, and James. You know, but at least we have someone. The other positive that we have is specifically at the elementary, we have 3 individuals that have associate's degrees, so they can fill in, and they have substitute teacher license, so they can fill in for subs down there, as needed. We try not to do that because then that takes things away from the other kids, you know, taking a para and turning them in for a sub for the day. But at the middle and the high school, we really don't have any of those people, but we will after this week because I'm training one of them, so. Yeah, I basically tried to take a para contract, a teacher contract. I threw it together, Dina wordsmithed it, reached out, and that's kind of what we came up with. So we thought we should approve a job description first.
Question I have,
Yeah,
substitute on a school year, how many days do we not need a substitute? Pretty much daily, do we have to have?
0,
So it's something every day that we have a substitute.
0, yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say 0 because that's probably a lie. I want to say a handful,
Okay.
you know, very, very rarely.
I think the last time that we had this, 2 days.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, normally, especially
And then on those 2 days, they worked as, they filled in for para subs then. So, I mean,
Yeah.
they were, cause those, I mean, the first ones were teacher subs, but now this is a flexible sub, so you can sub in any position across the district.
Plus you have the consistency and everything else.
Yeah.
Correct. The one thing that I did, talk to kind of the secretaries is, we don't want this particular person to take long-term positions. We want this person to be that daily person that goes in. They also build a relationship with the kids, you know, all that. I don't need to go down that road, but yeah.
So, if there would be a day that didn't have a teacher needed, with the way that this is written, can we put them in a para
Yes,
sub-position
It would
without
be-
having that?
it would be
written?
assigned by administrator. Is that not in there?
It
Right
says
here in my
substitute
packet.
teacher.
Substitute teacher, daily substitute teacher where needed in the district. Yeah, we should probably add something
That it could be a support
that,
staff.
or support staff as needed. That's a good idea. Yep. Per administrator directives or something like that, yeah.
And there also, Dina sent out the letter or the email today. There's a 503 plan, and it should be a 504 plan, but that was corrected. But it wouldn't be in our packets, correct?
Correct.
Any further questions, comments?
Should we add that to the description?
I think that whoever makes the motion should say that, with the amendment or the addition of, in the event there is no,
Well, otherwise,
yeah,
simply say, I would move that we accept the substitute, the flexible substitute teacher job description as presented with the caveat that basic function would be to serve as the daily substitute teacher or para where needed and add the words or para
Okay.
after teacher.
Can we do it as assigned by the administrator?
Or substitute teacher, or needed, or as assigned.
yeah,
Okay,
You can wordsmith it.
I like as assigned.
okay,
Is
so.
that your final motion?
So my motion would be the basic function change, the basic function lines to add after substitute teachers or as assigned by administration where needed. So,
Second.
Marco, you got that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, motion by Ben Huber, second by Jason Motor. Any last minute discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, you have the CISA 8 services agreement in front of you. It went down because we no longer have the speech therapists on there. The only thing is we're possibly looking at 6 CIA days we might add. But for the most part, we've refined this 3 or 4 times and we're pretty comfortable of where we're at. So these are all the services that we don't have internally that we hire out.
I would move that we accept the CSA services agreement as presented.
What do the visually impaired services all include?
It includes Braille, it includes learning how to function, daily life. It includes a lot of modifications to assignments, printing materials, whether it's larger print or fully Braille, those types of things. It's a lot of accommodations. And as the student gets older, it moves into more of the life activities, how to function in society, being visually impaired.
And this is still significantly less expensive than we've had to send students to other cities to, live down in another city essentially.
I believe the visually impaired school's in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, I believe so. So, I mean, we've sent, and that cost is significantly greater than this.
Second.
All right, motion by Ben Huber, second by Mark Zacco. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, committees, you want me to take this, or do you want to take this, or I can start, you jump in? So yeah, Drew and I had a really good conversation, of the role of committees moving forward. We had some questions as well, like things are blended, like what's the actual gonna be objective of the land use committee, what's the actual objective of the finance committee? Today in my meeting with survey and advertising, I brought up that when it comes to putting out a survey, what does the survey all consist of? Does it consist of just finances? Does it consist of, do we wanna put in an apple orchard? Should we repair the football field, or should we repair the softball diamond? Should we combine the two? It's just like, there's so many moving pieces, it's a Rubik's Cube, and there's not a clear picture of where we wanna go. And then the second part of that discussion that we had is, when it comes to these meetings, what should they look like, the actual meeting? And if there is decisions that are made that are gonna be brought to the board, who makes those decisions? And then who is the spokesperson on behalf? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay,
you got
I think that's
the
what we
gist
had
of it,
talked
yeah.
about.
Yep.
More clarification of what is the role of our committee, specifically the members, and when it comes to recommendations, who's doing what? A lot of times I make the agenda based on the feedback from the admin team. I don't get a lot of feedback. I kinda try to guess where I think you guys wanna go with it, or what we feel is relevant. But when push comes to shove, if it's anything financial, it's Jessica and I setting up a meeting and crunching numbers, that's kinda where we're at. But when push comes to shove, it's a committee that has to make the decision. I mean, I definitely have an opinion, but it's a committee that needs to do that, so.
So, I've reached out to quite a few other districts, asked how their committees work and that kind of stuff. And I'm gonna apologize, I'm not trying to attack anybody or say we're doing it way wrong, but let's just take the finance committee meeting that just happened. Somehow that turned into a referendum meeting. And now we're talking about sending out surveys and so on. And my brain is, that's a finance committee. That was supposed to be discussing what is going wrong with our finances. Where are the opportunities to improve our finances? We're talking about a budget. There's definitely some things on here that are questionable. That's what a finance should do, is look at this and say, okay, this one's at 40%, should that be that? To me, a referendum is a solution to what the finance committee would come up with. So you kind of skip the judge and jury, and now we're at the executioner point. How do we know if a referendum is even remotely something we need if we don't come back to the beginning and say, these are our problems. Now, who's coming up with the solutions? And maybe I'm way out of whack on that, but that's how I envisioned it. And the feedback I'm getting, it was more of a referendum committee. So,
I'm not sure where you get your feedback from, but that's not how it went. Perhaps maybe as president, you are an ad hoc member of every committee, maybe you should come to some of those meetings as well, so you
Yep.
get the information accurately. What happened is we took a look at the different financial areas, we talked about many things, we talked about Fund 80, we talked about what happens if we don't have money when we have a 1.2 or possibly $2.5 million shortfall for 25-26.
Yep.
We asked Troy and Jessica to take a look at where can we cut, but you're gonna nickel and dime here and there. You're not gonna get to 1.2 or 2.5 million. So that's why referendum came up. We didn't make any decisions at that point.
No, I
We
didn't
talked
say
about
that.
how to go forward with the referendum. We suggested how we did the last referendum and, community meetings and then a survey. And none of us really knew how to proceed, so that's why we had the meeting this afternoon. So I'm not sure where you're getting your
Yeah.
information that it was all referendum, because that's not what
well,
it
that
is.
was how the
Ben, you were at
report
the meeting, do you
kinda
have
came
anything
across.
to add, Jason?
I didn't hear anything about, in our budget, this is what the, finance committee is gonna look deeper into, financial wise. Again, the referendum is already a solution.
Well, we talked, closing, Delwood. We talked about not closing Delwood. We talked about funding things for Delwood. We talked about how to get revenue for Fund 10, and basically, there are no options for Fund 10 revenue increases unless you go through the referendum process. Expenses on Fund 10, we did do some analysis of that, maybe not as deeply as we could have. But, I mean, we talked a lot about Fund 80 and the shortfalls that are in some of the portions of Fund 80 and how those affect and what we thought would be the best for the district going forward.
So other than the referendum solution, what other suggestions, and maybe I didn't get the full picture, that's why I wanted to have this discussion.
Well, honestly, today's meeting was pretty good. We talked about some different things there, and one of the things brought up was not getting the cart ahead of the horse, okay? So digging into things, looking more in depth, because at the end of the day, comment was made, we can't put all our eggs in one basket, whether it be, finding the cuts needed to make the deficit go away, or an operational referendum, whatever it may be. Same thing with, the daycare, and even the rec center at that, and looking into things that, ways we can save money and shape that into a better financial picture than what it currently is. We kind of took a step back, talked about all that today, so I think we have a avenue and a path here going forward.
And-
One of the points that was brought up at today's meeting was the fact that we can hammer Fund 80. That does not do anything for your operational Fund 10,
Right.
nothing.
Right.
So when you're in a deficit in Fund 10, Fund 80 isn't gonna help you.
Right.
So that's what we're.
Yeah, and I totally agree, that's
And-
why the finance committee is so important, they need to look at all of it,
And-
it's not one part.
And one of the things we did was, Troy brought forth the ideas to reduce expenditures, and we went through them, essentially line by line, looking at, if you cut an administrator, it's around 100,000 saving. If you cut a salary staff, it's about 80,000. If you cut hourly staff, you save about $50,000 per individual. Capital improvement, you can save 200,000 theoretically, but that's just, you know, well, I'm not gonna change my oil this week in my car because,
Kick the can down the road.
yeah, sooner or later, you're gonna, the can will need to be fixed. We looked at we looked at each one of these things, how we spend nearly $300,000 on extracurriculars. If you cut all of that, every extracurricular, that does not solve $1 million deficit. A police officer is around 90,000 if you want to remove the police from the district. So we talked about every one of these individual expenditure increase as possibilities that would need to be. So this was the, if we get no additional Fund 10 monies, and we don't have any power over setting that up, that's all comes from the state. The only way we could, as a district, would be through a referendum process for an operational referendum. Otherwise, you have to look at, you know, cutting a dozen to 20 teachers is another option.
One of the things that what Ben is referring to is, I know that one of the things that came out of the finance committee is, again, don't put your eggs in one basket. Troy, Jessica, figure some things out. What are some options? So let's just pretend no more busing. We save $700,000. People have to figure out their own way to get to school. Okay, that is close to 1.2 million. You know, so what are the positives and negatives of not having busing? You know, those are the types of things that we have on that list. And we briefly discussed that today. You know, today's meeting that we have was a survey meeting, was like, if we do a survey, what would we survey? We have so much stuff going on. And one of the things that I had brought up, you know, based off of what you and I talked about, is we have to be careful, because if we put out a survey without people knowing what they're actually being surveyed about, like, don't give me a survey on what's the best vehicle to buy. I don't have a clue, because I gotta ask the experts. You know, we have to be careful of when we put out a survey, what we put out a survey, you know, those types of things. We wanna get community input, but yet at the same time, we have to know what our end goal is. And our end goal, in my mind, is to keep quality education in Clintonville School District. And knowing our community that is a part of the district. So I think that first financial meeting was a lot of spitballing, a lot of Fund 80. I think it really was. Today's meeting was more of a focus. Okay, we have to, I think that's what came out of it, is we need to figure out a focus before we move forward.
Maybe
You know?
it's just a work in
Yeah.
progress, but I wanted to have this discussion.
What meeting was today? I wasn't notified of any meeting.
Email.
There's
I didn't get one.
there's a virtual meeting today regarding what a survey could look like.
Never received it.
Okay.
The only thing I got is that there's a financial meeting tomorrow at 5:30.
And we're gonna review everything that was talked about today. Okay. I don't know how I missed you,
Okay.
but
So, little adjustments. I'm not saying we're way off course here. I feel like we need to rein it back, kind of like Troy said. Let's just use the referendum. If that is the avenue we gotta go, we have to build up to that so everybody's on the same page. And we start sending surveys out as a board, then the referendum committee comes along, they do that. All good intentions, but if we're not steering the ship the same direction, nothing's gonna happen. And that's all I want, is to get us all on the same page, talking and being effective with what we're doing. Mark?
I was at that last finance meeting, and the reason the survey thing came up was talking about, like, it was discussed, cutting sports, like numerous sports, cutting teachers,
Yep.
all different, and is an option. And the reason it was discussed is because when Nick was here, he had discussed that, okay, if you guys are gonna go to a referendum, you have to start sooner or later, probably by August at the latest, get this survey out for this referendum in April.
Yep.
That's the reason for that.
And I'm not saying that shouldn't have been a discussion, it just shouldn't be a future plan for that group until it comes back to the board. Hey, here's what happened, just like you just said, Mark. These are the things we talked about. Now, this board should decide what's the next step for the finance committee. Until that happens, the finance committee should not be going out doing anything.
Well,
So to speak. So to speak.
I think what, if I may,
Yep,
we made no recommendations, you start this survey at this, no, all we did was ask questions. We asked questions like, what would happen if we went from half-day 4K to full-day 4K? How would that affect?
I'm just trying to keep us from going off.
Well,
the
well,
road.
what I'm saying is, there was absolutely nothing, the committee directed no one to do anything other than to answer some financial
I'm not
questions.
disagreeing with you.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't hear any of that.
I don't think you have to worry that was the direction we went. I mean, it was a wide-ranging
It
discussion.
was an information gathering.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, that's what it was.
And as we get going on this, some of this stuff is just gonna work itself out, so to speak. The one big thing I brought up to Troy is he's putting a lot of time and effort into these committees. Gathering information, trying to guess where these committees are going. And to me, that's the backwards way of doing it. He should be more of a resource at these committees that, okay, we're looking at the budget, here's this, this, and this. Troy, can you get me information on this, whatever, elementary school line? Troy would say, well, what information do you want? Well, we see a big problem here, can you dive into that, give us the financials, so at our next finance meeting, we have that dug down. He's getting the information that actually is needed, instead of trying to gather information on all of this. I'm betting any committee probably uses 90% or less than 10% of all the information you get. 90%.
I'm gonna borrow a line from Chris.
Okay?
We don't know what we don't know. There's the expert of this
That's why
district.
he's a reference there.
Not just a reference, he's the one who knows what you're supposed to, we're not running the district, he's running the district.
That's
We don't
right.
run the district, you need to look up what the roles and
The board is
responsibilities
the
of
one
a
that-
school board is.
The board is the one that leads.
The board is a policy-making board, and they oversee the superintendent. You need to look that up. We don't micromanage all of
Exactly,
these
that
things.
is not our job,
That's not the role of a school board.
absolutely not.
That's
I
why
don't know
we
where
hire a
micromanaging would get
superintendent.
into any of that.
Do you have 8 years plus of schooling in a school district operation
I don't see why that's relative.
to make decisions about how to run a district?
I'm not making decisions. This board is making decisions.
I don't see anybody on this board that has the qualifications that he does to run a district.
And that's good, because he's in the right position.
It-
It's not a micromanaging when you're working together. But when we're asking him to provide all this information, and then as a committee, you dig down into about 10% of it, that's a waste of his time, and I would say that is micromanaging him. Let him just get the answers we need. And the only reason we're gonna have questions and answers that we need is by having effective committee meetings.
But if you don't know what you need to ask, how can you have what you call an effective committee?
That's why the board is looking at this and saying, hey, what is going on with Fund 80? What's going on with Fund 10? Finance Committee, can you dig into the Fund 80 stuff more? Okay, so then you guys, as a Finance Committee, you dig into it and say, holy cow, where is this money going? Or how do we get more money? Troy, can you dig into these specific things for us? Because he knows that.
I would
You're
say
right,
that
you don't know the answers, but you have to ask the questions.
we were not inundated today with information prior to it. One couple of pages, that's it.
I've
I-
seen the amount of work he does for the
Oh, no,
community.
I know, understand, I understand,
Yeah.
but but I also wanna say that he is truly best qualified to say what portions are the things that you probably should look at. Now, we as individual board members have our job as due diligence to make sure that we read and understand the information that's given to us. And then if we have specific questions about that information, email him first, so he has time to have the answers before the meeting. And that's why maybe as a rule, when you're sending out your invitations for the next, policy meeting, whatever meeting it is, say, the scheduled date is this, please send information back to me that you would like covered.
I just wanna comment, since you're kinda commenting about me, I can say something. Even though I don't live in Clintonville, I think that you guys know I'm vested here. I brought my kids to the district. I drive my 25 minutes every day. I told you when you hired me as middle school principal, I think Clintonville fits my philosophy very well. Not everybody is set to go to a four-year college, and Clintonville has really grown in the two-year degrees as well as the school to work programs. And I think that fits the Clintonville community very well. When it comes to my workload, it is what it is. We're not in the Green Bay, we're not in Appleton, we're not in Oshkosh. Do I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and text myself so I don't forget when I wake up at 5 a.m.? Yes, I do. But I think we all do that to some extent. Where I am happy is that we have a strong administration director team. We do have a staff who is pretty transparent, that isn't afraid to come to any board member or to myself. I don't feel that there's like secret meetings being had or anything like that, and that's a positive, and that's not true for other school districts. That's a positive that is going on here. I do think that as we move forward, our committees will have more of a defined focus. I really, even at tomorrow night's meeting, instead of having an agenda 20 things long, it's 4. So I think we're gonna define our focus on that and our goals. But when push comes to shove, I'll comment kind of what all of you guys said. It's my job to know more. It's my job. It's my job to have all the individual conversations with everybody else. The hard part sometimes is to not be biased, because I obviously have an opinion. But my opinion in a lot of times doesn't matter. I'll give my opinion, but when push comes to shove, it's what's best for the district, what's best for the kids in Clintonville, what's best for the taxpayers of Clintonville School District. So if I'm overworked, I'll let you know. But when push comes to shove, I feel that's part of our job. Yes.
Well, the main point was
Yeah.
trying to find avenues to free up some of
Yeah.
your time, especially when it's not efficient.
I get it. I would love to
That's
be in-
something against you.
I get it. I'm one of those superintendents that says, I wanna be in classrooms more. I actually had 3 teachers say, Troy, we didn't see you very much this year. I get it.
Right.
And I would love to do that, so I'm glad that this is brought up to how to prioritize things.
Yeah.
But we have to continue working as a team to make that happen.
Absolutely.
So the new guy.
new guy.
I wasn't gonna stop talking.
I thought you were locking me out here.
What is our objective, our goal with the committees? I mean, I understand we find a problem, we have them do deeper. Is the idea to engage more with the community and have the community be more effective at a local level on the committees? Or is it a extension of the board to break out and solve those items without community engagement?
true committee, I feel it's the latter. You have people who are, let's say, finance people who really wanna get in, that's their niche, they figure things out, they problem solve. You know, they would be on that committee. If somebody's really got, you know, relationships with staff, we used to have a salary and benefits committee. You know, the people
When you
with.
say they, are you talking board members or
Yeah,
community members?
board members.
Okay.
When it came to community members being on committees, and correct me if I'm wrong, at least my time here, that was really when we got community input, was when we were going to referendum. The committee made the recommendation to have more of an open forum meeting to get community input. That was one of the things we actually talked about today is, you know, that's just not send out a survey to send out a survey. What's our goal with the survey? We had talked about that as when, let's just pretend 50 people show up at the finance committee tomorrow. What are we gonna do? Is it just the committee at a table? Is everybody get a free microphone and can just say whatever they want? You know, those types of things. I truly feel it's the people at the table crunching numbers, doing whatever they can. It is open to the public. Most of the time, public doesn't show up to committee meetings because there's no decision being made.
And I get the board it would come to, and the vote would be here. I guess as a follow-up, I know when we looked to create the finance committee, it was, I believe you and I were talking during the meeting, that if there was 3 members, it could be a committee. If there was 4 people, a 4th person could attend but could not participate because it was a forum.
A quorum.
A quorum?
Quorum,
Okay.
to you.
I mispronounced a lot of words.
A quorum is reached anytime you have half of the members of if there's, for instance, say, the Clintonville Common Council has 10 members.
Mm-hmm.
A quorum is reached at 5, because half of the people could vote no. So that means that only 4 people there could talk to each other. 4 of the 10 could be in a committee at one time.
So what would happen if we had a committee meeting where 4 people were there, and I know you had mentioned as an ad hoc you could show up. If Drew participated and there was 3 members there, are we in violation of a state statute, or where do we sit with that?
Well,
Dina posts them, so we're not in violation.
right.
And we're not making decisions.
Yeah,
And
there's no
if,
action
and
taken.
There's
if,
no action.
and
So,
if,
no, we're
if,
not
let's say,
violating.
the finance committee would meet, the 3 members of the finance committee are the ones who get to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And even though discussion can be, you came and you were discussing things, you would be part of the conversation, but not the vote to recommend to the full board.
But
Maybe
that-
that's my-
That contradicts what we discussed the first time this was on. We said we weren't gonna assign committee members, and anybody that showed up had a vote.
No, that's
No,
that's
we-
illegal.
Guarantee you
That's illegal.
We only have a couple people listed on each of the committees.
Because you can, if you go more than 3, it is no longer a committee meeting, it is
But
a
we
full
could
board
have-
meeting.
So
No,
then, it's only 3 board members that are voting at these committee meetings?
that is an option.
This is what I wanna get defined,
We,
so we all know.
a little history, we as a board have always, for most of the last 20 years, have been a committee of 7. Every problem came to every member, and that's the only time. You wanted to create another committee so you could look at some of these things. So the rule says that 4 board members cannot vote on recommending to the full board. 3 members could vote to recommend to the full board. You can take surveys, you could take lots of things, but if it's a formal vote to recommend to the board, only the board members that are present and on the committee may vote.
So I'm not trying to get hung up.
Otherwise, it would be a violation of quorum law.
And I'm not trying to get hung up in the weeds on the
Yeah.
quorum law, but let's just say tomorrow night, all 7 of us show
Yeah.
up. And we all talk, and at the end of the day, it's, hey, we're gonna vote on what the agenda is. Because 4 of us don't vote for that agenda, it's not a quorum.
Only the 3 on the committee can vote.
we were all there
The rest of us
discussing,
can't.
right?
So now-
Sure, I'm just asking, don't we still have a quorum, because we could all be
And
discussing.
it's posted.
Let's post it.
And it is
Posted,
posted,
so
and
the
it says,
board thinks
the,
it's
and
covered.
the committee members will be there, additional board members may be present, but no,
Did Dina post that one already? It should say
Yeah,
no action
I'll
will be
look it up.
taken at this meeting. It should stay in the posted, no action will be taken.
I believe it did.
Back to your point, Drew, what I believe that there was a couple things that was talking about is at a past meeting, we did get, I'll just say it, the Finance and Benefits Committee, we had teachers on that, we had other people on it. We went around the room, everybody gave their opinion, X, Y, and Z. But when it got put on the agenda, we did, it's no different than hiring somebody. We're gonna get everybody's input, but if push does come to shove, the recommendation of the board members is maybe different than what the recommendation of those that attended the meeting. That should be clearly defined if there is a recommendation brought to the board.
Kind of think where you were going with that. If we have most of the board showing up to these committee meetings, what's the purpose of a committee meeting?
and that's why the board has always run, if
And
we need a question on, if we need an additional meeting on finances, we set up an additional meeting with all 7 members. That's
But where my
the
brain
other
goes
option.
is, that's where the committee can filter through,
Yes, that's
but
the.
not if it's solely based on board members. Other boards that I've been on, committee members are just people. You have a chairperson of that committee, they can pull in together up to whatever you decide as a board. So let's just say, we'll just keep using the finance committee. Jason's the chair, you get to pick 6 other people that you think are gonna help you dig down into the finances. I don't care who they are. You're not making any decisions, so it really doesn't matter. Hopefully, it's 6 non-board members, because then you can dig into all this stuff, you can get it all, then you come back and say, all right, my committee, this is what we figured out, here's the problems. We don't really have any solutions yet, but what do you guys think? We talk about it, hey, based on what you said, this is what we think. Go back, why don't you look into this, this, and this? Got it. And that takes the burden off the board. Kind of like what I was saying with him. We're still the experts. He definitely knows everything about everything, or close to it. When needed, you reference him, but we should all be sitting back, and people should be bringing us the information because they are the experts in the field.
Now, if I focus, my mind went to the Delwood and to the rec center, right? We have a person that manages each.
Yeah.
That would seem like a logical person to be on the board. Would that be the way, the committee?
They
I'm
are
sorry.
they are on the rec center
Yep.
committee, they attend those meetings.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
Delwood committee, they attend those
Now,
meetings.
if we were gonna have, you know, a recommendation of X, Y, and Z, and it's gonna directly affect them, yeah, like tomorrow's meeting, if we're talking about rec center and Delwood rates, it would be nice if Ashley and Patty, you know, show up, but I have talked to them, I know where
And-
they sit with those type of things. The thing that I did wanna say, Drew, I love the enthusiasm. I don't know if we could get 6 people, not board members, to show up to a meeting. I really wish
problem
we
that is.
could.
But
Not a
another thing, Drew, you could have 6 school
Yeah.
board members on that committee, and they could be voting members
Yeah.
if that's what we so choose. But no more than 3 board members may vote
Right.
on any
But-
committee.
But
meeting.
even at 3, you're still getting it's not a majority, but you're getting such an influence from the board. Are we really getting objective information back? That's
Well,
my fear.
the thing is my brother's a smart guy. If I brought him in here, his as a first year board member, the first few months, your learning curve is so large. Just to figure out, well, what is Fund 39, what is Fund 50, what is Fund 80?
But we're
yeah.
talking a committee.
But
They
again,
only need to know what they need to know, and having Jason
if,
as our
if
treasurer.
you wanna include more members, great. I don't think they're gonna show up. That's my guess.
That's a real risk, but
You say that it's gonna streamline what we're doing, and in actuality, it's going to extend and make it wider, because you're gonna have people who don't understand what's going on. They're gonna ask questions way down like, Fund 80, what is that? So you're gonna spend your whole meeting explaining what Fund 80 is, which we could be doing at a board meeting. That's not the purpose of a committee meeting. A committee meeting is to make a recommendation. And again, we'll go back to why we just had all special board meetings when issues came up.
right. I get
To
that,
add
but
all
I
these
think
committees, you're just extending
So-
everything.
we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not including more people.
I
Because-
hear from people.
Because
You hear from
you-
people,
you're
you
right.
hear from people, we
it
are
is going to
hearing.
make it more, but if you don't get, like, the people in the audience and financial people downtown and business owners that understand what we're doing, we'll go back to the referendum.
There's the
They're
key,
gonna say-
there's the key right there.
And
And
that's,
that's what we talked about
and
at
that's
the
only
meeting
gonna happen
today.
if we bring
But there's
people
a
in.
time and a place for that.
It
You
has,
have to plan it ahead of time. That's the purpose. You
but
don't
right now, we're
involve-
not, there's
on
not
the
even
bottom.
talk of that. We're the board, that's it, we can handle it, give us more money and life will be fine.
Nobody said that. Nobody has said that.
That's,
So if,
Regardless.
if I kind of help try to calm the room down a little,
that'd be great.
there's some committees that, since I've been on the board or even attending, that I've never heard from. So, I mean, do we have committees that don't have anything that they're doing?
Yes.
Or if they don't have an objective, then why do we have the
And they
committee?
don't need.
So
Yeah.
like the rec center committee, we're supposed to meet yearly, go through the budget, go through upcoming expenses, go through faculty, review the expectations of employees and patrons. If something else is coming up, like we just had one because Ashley wants to redo the floors for safety, etc. Now, it didn't meet the $50,000 threshold, but I told Ashley, this is a big purchase, let's have a meeting and discuss it first. So we had that meeting. Delwood, we meet, probably annually when we talk about should we discuss fees, raises, all of that kind of stuff, where we sit financially. Those are kind of ad needed. Now, I didn't have an official finance and budget meeting with teachers this year, but I know the teachers that were on it in the past, and I had individual conversations, with them and got their feedback. Did everybody agree? No. But this year, we didn't have a lot of choices.
But if you're able to handle that directly, or by them coming to the board handle directly, is there a need to have that committee then?
Exactly.
And I think the rec center committee is a good, is there one board member? Yeah, there's only one board member, and the rest is community. So Mark, as the only board member, doesn't get to say, well, everybody in the room is against it, but I say I'm gonna recommend this to the.
Right.
So it is, that is the purpose of committees, is to have some discussion and then bring those discussion points to the larger group.
And that reiterates my point. Obviously, that works pretty well, because there's not big discussions about the rec center, and they have meetings, and then you guys bring stuff to us. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. The board, all these members don't need to be in there. I would say that's micromanaging. Let other people do that busy work, find that answer, and then bring it to the board, so we can all, with Mr. Kuhn, look at the facts that they've already done all the work, and then we look at it. Just like
And that
someone's
I
making
think
bread.
that works well with the rec center, where there's lots of people that attend that.
Yeah.
And nobody reads the financial reports of the schools unless they're required to. No one does it for fun.
You got anything?
Well, I just think about the timing, I think it would be great to have
and we have annual meetings, we have meetings every other week that the public is invited to come, and I'm very glad that we get a handful, but,
But
but,
I said it in today's meeting, we will get to that point.
oh, absolutely.
Because when we get to the point, and I even threw some names out today at the meeting. When we get to the point of, hey, Troy's recommending that we cut 50% of bus routes and kids are gonna be on the buses for 2 hours, who's gonna be a part of that decision? You know, I threw some names out there, so we have to be strategic. You know, I had mentioned when we get our ducks in a row, we might need to ask to speak at the churches, we might need to ask to speak at the Lions Club, Rotary, you know, those types of things, so that we do get the facts and people are just not making decisions on Facebook posts and I heard from so-and-so. We need to get to that because like I said, preface for the last 6 months, us proposing a $1.2 million deficit this year, it's not good, but we have $3 million in fund balance, so it's not gonna kill us. Now, when we do that for a second year, ouch. So we need to figure out a solution, and there's multiple solutions. But depending on who you are and how that affects you, is gonna depend on your feelings towards those solutions.
Yeah, who we gonna hurt?
Exactly. I don't think anybody in here wants to cut sports, but if push comes to shove and I'm just throwing this out there, we don't pass an operational referendum, or we don't get this, that has to be a discussion. I mean, that's even, back it up. Steven and I have talked for the last 3 years. Are we redoing those tennis courts or not? Cause that's $300,000 to redo those tennis courts. If we redo them, do we only put one back in? Or do we just bulldoze them and plant grass? Cause that's a whole heck of a lot cheaper. Now, for the 4 weeks that Fayed uses that, $400,000 is a lot of money to keep those tennis courts out there. Those are the types of things when push comes to shove, we are gonna have to have the right people informed to make those decisions and to get the correct message to the public. And I typed up maybe this will calm everything today. I typed up my welcome back letter today. I know it's only June, but I typed it up today, and part of the message was, community members, the time is coming where I need you to attend board meetings, committee meetings, because your opinion will be valuable. That's right in my welcome back letter. So, I'm preparing for it, but I think the biggest thing that came out of today's meeting was slow down, let's get the facts, let's figure it out, let's hope for the best, but we have to plan for the worst. I think that's kind of sums up, and we're gonna discuss that at, those of you listening in YouTube world, show up at tomorrow's finance committee. We'll start talking about some of those hard decisions we might have to make. So, that's my 2 cents.
But we're probably not in a position to like really start this, but if we don't start, it's never gonna happen. So, just wanted to have these discussions, trying to turn the ship a little bit where, you know, Mr. Kuhn said it, we're gonna need the people that you're thinking of and the people he's thinking of and the people that all of us know, we need them to understand. And the more they get involved, the more they're gonna understand. It's gonna be a win-win.
I think,
That was the only point.
I think one other thing that I'd just like to bring up for reference, when we passed this referendum, we had referendum committee meetings, but all board members were there. So, I mean, they were public meetings that the board was not gonna make a decision,
Yeah.
but all board members were members of the
There can always be
committee.
exceptions. I just like to keep kind of a pattern and consistency, so we're all on the same page.
And I'm not afraid to fall on the sword. As a new guy, my understanding was different, you know?
Yeah,
so
oh
I
yeah,
straightened
oh
that
no,
out.
yeah,
So,
no,
I mean,
it's good, yeah, it's good stuff.
I guess since we're talking about committees, I don't know how to word this. So I am on the policy committee. I know we're gonna meet at some point, but I had a question raised for me, and I don't know, hopefully we don't go off the deep edge here.
Can I cut you off for 1 second? I'd like to hear on,
Sure.
from Jason about the finance meeting, and then we'll go to the policy.
What do you wanna hear?
Just everybody else said something. What's your thoughts on all this discussion?
Well, at the end of the day, Troy said what I said today, you know, that we need to slow down and start to figure things out. And we need to, you know, figure them out, worst case scenario, and start digging into things and coming up with some solutions or potential solutions, you know, plan A, plan B, so on down the line, you know, even, you know, when we had the meeting the first time, you know, I think there was for the people that were there, you know, there was some eye-opening that happened with some of the different things, you know, like Delwood, for example. You know, 60% of the tuition or the expense for each child at the daycare is burdened by the taxpayers. You know, so when we talked about those things, you know, we said this is something we have to begin to dig into and figure things out. And we all know that we can't raise the rates to break even over there, because there wouldn't be anybody bringing their kids there, because it would not be affordable, period. But there's other avenues that, you know, we can look into, whether it be, you know, having it what would be the best word, non-educational daycare, I guess would be the way to put it, which possibly drive down costs. Them or, you know, it's all different things you have to look into, but, you know, in like we said, you know, some of the things that were brought up, you know, it was just a matter of discussion, like they were saying. And, you know, as we start getting our feet underneath us, you know, in that meeting, I think it's going to start rolling toward the way we want it to roll. But, you know, just like with anything new, everything takes a little time to get your feet underneath you, so. That's where we're at. I think we're already starting to head into a right direction and looking at things already, and it'll be the second meeting tomorrow, so. Yeah.
Sounds pretty positive. Okay. Sorry.
No,
It's fine.
it was kind of a committee, kind of a policy, so I hit right in between, and then here we are. So part of, when we look at our district, right, and all of our three heads, we have, let's just use fees, right? So parking fees, that type of thing. We reference back a policy in order to enforce charging a fee. And then our policy is always based on descriptions to get rid of any ambiguity, that type of thing. So what does CPS stand for, since it's not a definition that we've defined?
Like Clinton Public Schools are Child Protective Services.
Okay, so
Because
both of them are-
caller ID if you're gonna pick up the phone or not.
I agree 100%. So when we go to the rec center and it says, okay, in district CPS, the schools would be in district, so I'm guessing that is students? So would that kind of point out the ambiguity that we have without defining it? The next question I have, are St. Martin's part of Clintonville Public School students?
Yes.
Because there is some perception out there that they feel the divide. And as a taxpayer, 13% of their taxes go to Fund 80. So we have to keep that in mind, that although not educational, we do have different entities that we have to be a community to come together rather than to create that division.
One of the things that I think Ms. Fergan and I hate patting myself on the back, but Ms. Fergan and I have really worked hard is transitions, knowing what is going on. There are quite a few St. Martin kids that come over and join our extracurriculars. We really changed up the end of the year events with the 8th grade breakfast and explained all the different organizations and clubs that St. Martin's can be a part of. We had a lot of positive feedback.
You get rave reviews at my house if that makes you feel better.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm not saying we do everything the best, but if we don't know, like, we can't fix it. So I think we've been doing a lot with partnerships. And again, I don't wanna throw everything out there, but when it comes to the students, I don't think there's animosity between the schools, I really don't. I think when it comes, especially at that middle school level, when they start playing sports and athletics together, they're all the same, and in a roundabout way, they're like, I can't wait till you're a freshman and we can all be together again, you know, that's.
I think the ambiguity is on a platform you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
not with the students.
Yeah, so, I don't, we have to figure out how to break through that then. But when it comes to policy and all that stuff, you know, even calling a snow day, I'm calling Emily and be like, hey, this is my thoughts, you got anything planned today? You know, what's going on, like even down to that level, you know, we do those things. So, that's, a lot of it's behind the scenes, it's not out there for everybody to see.
Well, I think we need to get
Yeah.
rid of that perception in the public, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we have to find more ways to show how we're unified, working together, because 90% of those ninth graders come here, they don't all go back to Marion,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I think we've exhausted that one. Unless anybody has anything else, we'll move on.
All right, policy, we do have the next policy updates coming out. I never like being the guinea pig district, meaning when we do the policies, we sometimes ask, what do the other districts choose for this? So I asked Tim about the third week in October to see if his, what was available for the policy committee. I'm looking at sometime in October. There's no rush to get these new policies done. The policies that we needed to get done before July 1st, we already have done. So we're good to go on that.
Well, it's gotta be after October 12th.
Okay, after October 12th.
I'll be in Mexico.
Must be nice to be
Of
retired.
And you requested an early morning?
Done. October 13th, 6 a.m. Meets all of Strongman's criteria.
Yeah, okay.
All right, items for future discussion.
Yeah.
I'd like to put the banning of cell phones in schools sometime in July.
One of the things that, my 3 a.m. conversation with myself was regarding the banning of cell phones. Do we want to put out some type of community input on that, or are we just gonna put it on the agenda and whoever shows up can fill out a blue sheet? And the only reason I'm asking that is because, you know, I can give the Theta Care version of why we should ban cell phones, I can give the mental health version for and against. I can give the other version of how cell phones are a part of our daily lives. I can give the non-biased thing. When push comes to shove, I'm just asking, do you want me to collect any more information besides what I already
You
have?
have a sample policy from another district that's got it?
I can definitely get one.
Is there a way to refine it that we're not talking about the other two entities? Because I know there was some concern at the last meeting.
Sure.
One other thing that I would ask is, it's one thing if you, like Texas is gonna do a statewide. If Clintonville has a cell phone ban, do we lose students? I mean, there is some pretty interesting studies on anxiety levels of teenagers when their phone is not with them. And people will leave.
So I don't know if we can 100% discuss it, cause it's not an agenda
That's true,
item
that's
right
true.
now,
Yeah,
but-
this is things, if you could bring more
Let
information.
me reach out to some districts and try to gather some information. I guess back to my original question, are we gonna do some type of a community thing? Cause if so, I would have to type something up, have the board review it before I send it out to get community input, or are we just waiting for them to show up to a meeting?
Well, that we can't answer right now either. We can't even give you
Well,
that
if
information.
anybody has ideas, email me.
Do you, are there districts that have already banned them in
There are
Wisconsin?
a handful.
Can you find out how it went?
I sure can.
Could that include academic performance, if there's any changes?
Ooh, that,
Ooh,
It's probably not,
Good question.
probably not happened.
yeah.
Probably too early
I
for
can
that.
Have that input.
Okay.
And the perception from districts I've talked to, if we were to lead the way, they'll do it at the same time. Now, whether or not that's true, it just seems like there's getting to be more and more of a movement of this. So maybe, you know, if you're reaching out to other districts, that'd be another thing to
Yeah.
ask them. If you haven't, would you consider doing it
Yeah.
and when?
Yeah.
So,
I,
good.
Yeah, I know Drew, you had mentioned, if you guys want anything on the agenda or us for consider, please email us or call us. I know you had mentioned that.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna keep reminding, like, that's how this works. We have 7 people that all have our own expertise. And if you have questions or want stuff on the agenda, let's talk about it. And eventually we'll all gain some momentum here. So, but I don't really hear from anybody, so
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more, even if it's just a comment, that's fine.
On the next one, I did want to bring this up because something came to my desk today, thanks to Steven, and I know Steven, you're here. I know that there's some people that filled out blue sheets regarding the no trespassing signs that were put up on the school outdoor lab forest over by Marion. And I contacted Steve after the meeting. They were correct that there were no trespassing signs. I then gave the directive to remove the no trespassing signs and right now put no hunting signs. And unfortunately, when Steve went out there, somebody else took it upon themselves to remove our signs. So, not real happy about that, where we have public land and now people are taking upon themselves to make their own rules. So, if anybody in YouTube land was that person that did that, I'm very disheartened on that. We're just trying to make decisions here on what's best for school-owned property, etc. But the new no hunting signs are now up, correct, Stephen?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So what is the status? Cause we had several people at last meeting. There we go, where's your land use committee?
So, like I said, the lease is done. I guess if we want to put that on an agenda, probably sooner than later, because, you know, September would be right around the corner. The 2 things that have basically been talked about is, if we wanna do some type of a lease, we dip our toe in the water, we don't do a 3-year or 5-year. We just try it for deer hunting only this year and see how it goes. That was kind of the consensus at the last meeting. I don't think there was an official vote, but that was kind of the consensus. So I have that done, we can put it on a
Yeah,
agenda.
why don't we put that on the next agenda?
Okay.
Well, I think with the amount of people that were here last meeting, we really should have it on an agenda. so.
Yep. Okay.
Okay,
One of the things that is missing on here for announcements, it should say that tomorrow is a finance committee meeting.
At 5:30, right?
I believe so, right? 5:30?
yes,
Yep, 5:30.
and, based on previous conversations, I've reached out to a few different law firms. And I'm trying to set up interviews where we can meet as a board, probably have to be a closed session, I think, and just compare law firms.
that could not be in closed session.
Nope, okay, well, then open.
Not,
I didn't know
if-
because of the money aspect of it. was
no,
the other
money
thing.
has to be in open.
Okay, and that's fine, so we just have to have probably a special meeting just for that. So, that'll be coming up. And, obviously, our current legal counsel will be the first one invited. All right, anything else?
I make a motion, we adjourn to closed session for consideration of matters over which the board has jurisdiction pursuant to Wisconsin statute